You're tuned in to the Gallagher Power To Farm podcast. Our animal management team discusses the hot issues with farmers and agricultural leaders, and we share the knowledge that will give you the power to run a resilient and sustainable farm business.
Hi, I'm Brian Rose, Product Manager for Farm Technologies at Gallagher Animal Management. And today we've got a podcast talking about NAIT compliance. And I think it's important to realise that in the animal management industry and across New Zealand, that NAIT and compliance is a really important factor. It's crucial in protecting our pastoral industry, and it's important that we get it right up front. So joining me today is OSPRI's Head of Traceability, Kevin Ford, and one of our Gallagher Territory Managers, Mark Sheridan. Welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
So, Kevin, can you maybe start us off and refresh our memory a little bit and those that are listening around farmers' key obligations for tagging and registering their animals at birth?
Yeah, sure, Brian. So if you've got NAIT animals, so cattle or deer, you're legally required to tag that animal within 180 days of birth or before first movement off farm, whichever comes first. But that's not the whole requirement. Once you've tagged that animal, you need to register it in the NAIT system. And what that registering step actually does is it creates a link between that tag and the electronic animal record in the system. And that's where you record that important information, location of birth, date of birth, the industry type. And you can put in additional things there around sex and etc. So you need to register that animal within 7 days after tagging it or before first movement off farm, whichever comes first. So coming up to calving season, if you've got calves going off to, say, a 4-day-old calf sale, you need to tag them and register them before they leave. And that's really important because if they get to the sale yard and the sale yard scans those animals in and you haven't done that registration step, then what the system will do is it will identify that tag as still being unused, but it's actually now on an animal because it's recorded in a movement. So the system will change the status to on animal and create that link. And that's when we pick up that an offence has been committed for failing to register an animal.
Right, okay. And how long has NAIT been running? How long has the scheme been in place?
The scheme's been in place. This is its 10th year, so 2012 it was introduced. So it's been going quite a while, but unfortunately, still a lot of people don't understand what their obligations are under the scheme or why it's important.
Right. And Mark, just bringing you in here as well, is that something you see a little bit of when you're out and talking to farmers? Do you see that type of occurrence of people still maybe coming up to speed with the system and how it works?
Yeah, 100%, Brian. On farm quite a bit, and there are a lot of farmers who do not understand what their obligations are. And even as a representative of Gallagher, I have to discuss what their obligations with NAIT is quite a bit on farm.
Yeah. And as part of what OSPRI does and part of the goals of OSPRI, Kevin, is to try and help with that education along with other providers?
Yeah, so one of the key requirements for the NAIT organisation is to support farmers and educate them on their obligations. We're trying to change the approach at the moment, though, from talking about, this is what your legal obligations are and infringements and prosecutions, and actually trying to get farmers to understand the importance of it. And this is actually around on-farm biosecurity preparedness and response. So when a disease outbreak happens, it's not because you have to do it because it's in the law. You should be doing it because it helps protect your farm, protect your livelihood, and it prepares you in the event of a disease outbreak. It means that if you've got good traceability records, you can get back into operating a lot quicker than if you've got poor records. So we're really trying to change the education focus to actually help farmers understand the practical tips of how to comply, but actually understand the importance of why. Because a lot of them just see it as a regulatory burden. It's just a pain in the butt, something else that we put on top of them.
Which I think is quite good, Kevin, because a lot of farmers that I'm dealing with still don't understand why they're doing it. And it's interesting because we talk now, when I go on farm, we say, well, what we're doing with COVID, similar to what we're doing here.
Do you think that's helped people understand more, Mark? Because it's a good example.
Yes, I think it has. I think they understand, now that they're tracking their own movements, they understand why they have to track and trace their animals' movements as well, 100%.
So you mentioned biosecurity, Kevin, in there as well. So thinking about that traceability around knowing which animals have been where and how that sort of enables, people to get up and running a bit quicker. Is there any particular example situations that you can think of where that traceability has really helped to be able to manage a critical disease outbreak?
Yeah, I mean, the one that jumps to mind is obviously Mycoplasma bovis. While in bovis stress tested the NAIT system and identified where there was a lot of room for improvement, we could never have attempted to eradicate the disease without the NAIT system. So that's really important. What the disease response teams have said to me is that, look, when you went on a farm and they had good traceability records, it was really easy to do that tracing, to get that farm back to operation, to eliminate it from their line of investigation. It was having accurate traceability records just makes it so much quicker and so much easier, and it reduces the risk of animals spreading the disease unknowingly. So if you've got animals that aren't registered and you're moving them, or you're not recording movements onto your property and then they're moving off, then you could be spreading the disease completely not knowing that you're doing it. If we look at our recent outbreaks for TB, we had, everyone is aware, we had outbreaks up in the Hawke's Bay, and exactly the same experience for our OSPRI disease management teams. When they went on a farm where the farmers had really good traceability records, we'd be able to track those animals really quickly, identify where there were animals at risk. We saw some movement-related transmission up into the Waikato. It was really easy if they had good records to be able to track it right back, actually work out, no, it's just a movement-related one. It was a one-off. And, reduce the impact on those farmers. Because when you are touched with a disease, then you start to have to deal with things like notice of direction where you're not allowed to move your animals. It starts to affect your reputation in the industry. People won't want to trade necessarily because they think you've got a disease risk problem. So, having accurate traceability records just helps us sort of control all of that.
Can understand that. And what do you think are some of those barriers for farmers at the moment? Are there certain things that kind of get in the way of farmers adopting the system or being able to do it? And there's probably a question that you could jump on to, Mark, is what do you see as those barriers as well?
I think the number one barrier that we hear, and what we're working on really hard at the moment, and we'll have a new system released in the second half of 23, is around the NAIT information system. So where farmers log onto the computer to record it. Look, it's the first system that was introduced. It's had some modifications to it, but it is not user-friendly, and we'll openly acknowledge that. It's why we're working really hard with our new integrated system called OSPRI. So that's one of the biggest challenges for farmers. Connectivity. This is a digital system. We have really bad rural connectivity. I raise this every opportunity I get with politicians. We've got this digital system in place, yet we haven't got the infrastructure in New Zealand, That creates a barrier. You can still get around it with things like satellite connections and stuff like that, but, they come with cost and, they've got their own issues as well. I think we've got, an ageing workforce who aren't necessarily tech savvy. Some still don't even have cell phones. So, the amount of movement recordings we get sent in on animal registration is still sent in on paper. It's quite surprising. And then I think when you look at, and this is where Gallagher has been fantastic in this area, you start looking at some of that on-farm tech, there's hesitancy for some farms to invest in the technology that actually makes this easier, whether it's wands, scanners, and enables them to extract other productivity gains from it. So I think if you're not prepared to invest in that, then you make a bit of a rod for your own back.
Has that technology piece changed over the years? If you look at more people getting smartphones and more people getting used to using apps and things like that, have you seen that kind of maybe start to swing a little bit? Or I guess there's still a lot of traditional people out there?
Yeah, we are definitely within our younger farmers, all demanding, why can't they do this on their phone or on their tablet? Really sort of pushing for that. So our younger farmers coming through really sort of demanding that this needs to be more tech-enabled and looking at ways that they can optimise operations on farm, which is fantastic. I don't know, Mark, what are you seeing in your space? You guys, this is your area of expertise in regards to tech-enabling.
Yeah, I think you've probably touched on all the points. The connectivity is a big issue, and I think that creates a deeper problem in that because connectivity is an issue, farmers don't use the technology. It's quite simple. Why would I have a cell phone if I've got no cell phone coverage? And that is the reality. And it's interesting you mentioned the politicians, because I think, if you were going to be honest, the biggest exporting industry in New Zealand, it means a lot to our economy, and yet we struggle to get that connectivity and that productivity to those people.
Very good points, Mark, there. So, Mark, you are out and about regularly with farmers and, talking to farmers and working with them in your role. What are some, really good setups and systems that you've seen that work really well?
The best systems are the ones that the farmers have embraced the technology. They've realised how easy it is, how simple it is to use. And I should be careful when I say that because I use it every day. But they've seen and they've understood how to use it, and they've built it into their system rather than going, this is something I have to do extra. They've created it as part of their system. So, for example, a farmer will purchase the reader. They'll go into the yards as the animals are going on the truck. They'll scan. And if they do have that connectivity, they'll make the transfer or the movement, the NAIT movement there and then. And those farmers who embrace that, who incorporate that into their system, seem to be the ones that are most successful with it. If they have a problem, they get in touch with the supplier, such as ourselves, our tech services or our territory managers, and go, I've got this problem, how do I sort it out? Rather than putting it under the bed and hoping it might go away.
I like that point of getting the job done, right then and there when the animals get on the truck, rather than having to think about it later or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
And that's where the connectivity leads into that issue. If you don't have connectivity, you can't do it there and then. Doing it there and then is obviously the ideal scenario because it's done, and like you said, Brian, you can forget about it. You can go home and take it easy that evening without having to go, I've got to do that movement now.
Kevin, I'm back to you and to OSPRI. I understand the team's recently been consulting farmers and looking at where the NAIT program may go over time. Based on that feedback, are there certain improvements you're looking to make to the traceability system? You mentioned My OSPRI, but are there other things as well that are potentially coming through?
So we went out and consulted with the industry, with levy payers, on a proposal to increase the funding. And that proposal is around the implementation of what we call a new traceability operational strategy. So over 2020 and 21, we worked with all of our key stakeholders across the industry to develop a new strategy that put in place a fit-for-purpose traceability system for New Zealand, one that is easy to use, that has high degrees of data accuracy, that is customer-centric, and that supports value extraction. And when I talk about value extraction, farmers have a lot of money tied up in data around their animals, and it varies across the different industry types. And there's opportunities for farmers, if they can service that data, to actually get better value, particularly when you look at sale of animals throughout their lifetime or even into slaughter. So we wanted a system that not only meets the regulatory requirements, but one that actually supports a really robust disease response, gives really good market assurance, but allows farmers to identify and look at how they can get better value and return on that investment that they're making. So that strategy, we took it out, we put it in the National Operations Plan. As I said, it's customer-centric. We're changing our approach, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to, we're saying it's intelligence-led. So we get all of this information coming in around what farmers are doing, and we haven't really done much with it. We haven't really done analysis of that to turn it into intelligence. So that strategy is around sort of taking the information, analysing it, getting some really good data around it. And some of that is about understanding what are the barriers to farmers adopting the right on-farm practice. So not talking about, what are the barriers to compliance, but what's stopping somebody from actually doing the right thing and protecting their farm. So what are we looking at in regards to changing people's behaviour to adopt good on-farm traceability and biosecurity practices? That sort of strategy has got some internal critical enablers. So that's that new technology platform, My OSPRI, and that's an integrated animal health disease management traceability system. So it's not just replacing NAIT, it replaces our disease management system as well. And then it's got some research and development. So we're doing stuff around tags at the moment. And then it's a strong focus on data accuracy. If we don't have accurate data, then that compromises both our market assurance requirements, but also our disease response. But what we acknowledged is OSPRI can't do this alone. We've got around 12 regional partners out there working with farmers. We can't be across the whole country. There's over 98,808 locations registered in New Zealand with pickers.
That's a big number.
It's a big number. So we really have to embrace and work with industry. So this whole strategy, the external critical neighbour, is all centred around industry partnerships, like what we're doing today, working with Gallagher to get this message out there and, and have these types of conversations. But also working with Gallagher around technology innovation and how we can make it easier for farmers and work on that value space as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned in there around building that platform, having that data and that intelligence and sort of being able to really extract some more value from that and being able to enable farmers, I guess, ultimately to do more with that. Is there a piece in there that might be looking at who you may work with to then create more value as a partnership with some of that data? Because there's others obviously creating a lot of data as well.
There's lots of opportunities there. One of the key ones that really jumps out, obviously, is with the stock and station agents. They approached us actually. And the example I'll use came up from Northland. They were telling us that, look, what we're seeing, this is during the Embovis outbreak, if we've got a farmer who can prove that he's got a negative bulk tank milk test result, what we're seeing at sale is that those calves are getting a premium. So how can we surface this disease information, this traceability information at point of sale so that we can extract the best price possible for the farmer? So when you start looking at, the technology solutions and stuff, how can we actually surface this information really easily at sale, whether it's in a sale yard or online, so that, one, people can actually make informed decisions about biosecurity and risk. What animals do I want to bring on my farm? And then what am I prepared to pay for that? And what our research has shown is that a significant portion, over 70% of farmers, are prepared to pay more of a premium if they know that the animals are fully traceable and they've got no disease risk associated with them. Because the economic impact on them, let alone the stress levels, is huge if they were to bring in an animal that, BVD, if you've worked to eradicate BVD off your farm and you bring in a PI animal, the cost of that is huge.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful story behind that and that data in there, for sure.
And then you've got things around genetics as well. You look at the dairy industry and the amazing work that they do there. If you're looking to sell animals, being able to surface that genetic information as well, so that people can make informed decisions about what they're purchasing and what they're prepared to pay.
That's good. And then, Mark, we're thinking about change in NAIT and how the system's been. Do you think farmers out there are looking for or needing and wanting some change there around how the scheme currently has worked? What have you been hearing in the market?
Well, what I've been hearing in the market is that they want it to be made easier. How you do that, I'm not entirely sure. Probably Kevin talked to that a bit earlier. But that's what they want. They want it to be easier. And I think what we've talked about today, if you look at the barriers, that's probably a big step to making it easier. They see it as complicated. They see it as difficult, where they're not tech savvy, I guess. So we need to, as an industry, we need to come up with easier ways, I think, to make this work a lot more efficiently and a lot better for farmers. Because at the end of the day, as Kevin said, we can't do it. They have to do it, and they need the tools to make it work for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, having those tools and talking about electronic identification and traceability, which is so, important to biosecurity and the likes. But otherwise, Mark, how can these tools otherwise help farmers to improve their practices on farm? What else can I get out of, just apart from just the traceability side of things?
Kevin actually talked about that before too, the genetics, making future selections on herd development through data-driven decisions now would probably be a big one. Knowing which animals grow the fastest, which are able to achieve a premium quicker. If you have a look at certain kind of silos in the industry, I take a couple of bull cell farmers that I have in my region. They are very specific about how they do it, and they are weighing every week, and they are monitoring the weights of their animals and are they on target to achieve what I want them to achieve in the time frame I want them to achieve it in, and then making future selections for genetics based on all that data that comes out. Decisions as simple as understanding who you're buying your animals from and which ones are providing you with the best setups for good growth and those sort of things as well. Just simple stuff like that, very easily done with the new technology.
So that electronic tag is sort of enabling that easy identification of those animals throughout your farming practices. Is that kind of what you're saying, Mark?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Making selection decisions as well. I've got a farmer out here in New Plymouth realised with his weigh scale that he purchased that he could understand who was selling him the best animals for the best growth rates and the best return on his animals, and it's changed his buying decisions on that.
That's a cool thing for, I guess, even for you, as far as helping that person get into that and then seeing the benefits that they're getting from the gear must be really rewarding. So
it's awesome, especially when they ring you and say, "Oh, look, I've done this," and they've done it on their own and figured it out by themselves as well. It's just fantastic, yeah.
And I think another piece, going back to what Kevin said before, that being customer focused around what we're trying to deliver and getting that piece right up front, well then, that hopefully helps with the whole piece as far as making things easier, making them simple, and overall, that farmer hopefully doesn't have to spend that time sitting inside in the office in front of the computer too long. He's outside more doing what they want to do rather than, that office piece. So it's really good.
And I think the tech's going to go the way of the phone too. Everything's going the way of the phone. So once, hopefully we get that connectivity sorted out, things will become a lot easier because we won't have to go home and do it. We'll be able to do it on our phone there and then and move on to the next task.
Nice. And then I guess that's where it really leads into that kit, being able to having the right equipment as part of that to be able to do the job. So being able to easily identify those animals and being able to then have the right solution to be able to analyse that data that you're talking about to make those decisions. It's kind of really see what you're saying is important in there. I really enjoyed listening to you both today, and I thank you for joining me on the podcast. So Mark and Kevin, thank you. And the key points for me that have come out of this conversation is the importance of complying with NAIT and the regulations and the impact of that on New Zealand's biosecurity for pastoral farming. And it's really not just about compliance. As food producers, we're marketing products to the world, and having full traceability really gives us that competitive advantage that we need on the world stage. When we look at the equipment that's used out on farm, if you use that right equipment, it can really help you to make compliance easy and improve those farming practices and ultimately make that farmer more productive and more efficient in what they're trying to do on farm. So, once again, I've really enjoyed having you both join me this afternoon, and the insights that you've given me into what's happening around NAIT and what's happening on farm is really valuable. So thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on the Gallagher Power to Farm podcast. Learn more about today's topic and our panel guests by visiting www.am.gallagher.com